Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the first book review I'll be doing. I'll be reviewing this book, Canada's Religions by Robert Choquette. I thought this would be a good book to start with since it's a general overview of religious history in Canada. This book provides an excellent overview of the history of religions in Canada. Choquette strikes a good balance between detailed descriptions and narrative. Though I don't have time here to summarize the whole book, I will say that Choquette describes the history of religion in Canada from the New France colony in the 17th century through the British conquest of New France in 1760, the establishment of British rule and the surge in immigration during the American War of Independence, as well as the War of 1812. He also describes the spread of evangelicalism in English-speaking Canada and its influence on shaping culture there, as well as the role of the Roman Catholic Church in shaping French-Canadian identity. Choquette covers Canadian religious history right up to the present, but there are way too many details for me to summarize much further. His overall argument is that religion has played a central role in Canadian history since the very beginning. He enacts this argument by describing in detail the history of religious groups in Canada and emphasizing the unique relationship between religion and society. Christianity figures very largely in that story. He is balanced in demonstrating both the positive and negative elements of Christian history in Canada. This balance seems to come from his belief that religions reflect the social aspirations and prevailing notions of their flocks, for example, racism or capitalistic pursuit. So, for Choquette, because religions are ultimately human attempts to understand the divine and divine revelation, they are necessarily afflicted by human depravity, while also being a source for expressions of human goodness. Therefore, he sees religions as being places of tension, because they tend to reflect the particular values and ideas of their people, which can lead to a watering down of the faith or contradictory behavior, while also reminding their people of God's presence and promise. Choquette excels at situating Canadian religious history, especially regarding Christianity and many of its developments, in its historical context in Europe. For example, the importance of Gallicanism and Ultramontanism in Quebec he situates in terms of these ideas' development in Europe and the strength of European influence on Quebec. Like many historians, Choquette is quick to see Christianity's emphasis on evangelization, before the mid-20th century, as being inextricably bound to civilization, or what some call a civilizing tendency. Despite this, he is quick to acknowledge the good done by missionaries and explains the bad that has come out of missionary endeavors in a fairly satisfactory manner by noting the human and thus fallen nature of religious institutions, rather than jumping on the anti-colonialist bandwagon. In this way, he provides a nuanced assessment of Canadian Christian missions in contrast to contemporary bandwagon calls to grab the proverbial torch and pitchfork. Choquette, it becomes clear as you read through the book, is a Christian of some kind, or at least holds a monotheistic worldview. His knowledge and presentation of Protestantism was at times lacking, though overall he was well researched. He was very knowledgeable on Catholicism, much more so than Protestantism, and this came through mostly in the fact that there were usually way more pages devoted to discussing Catholic developments than Protestant. One of the drawbacks of Choquette's work in this book, because it's more of an overview than a monograph, is that he often neglects to supply evidence for his claims. Now, I don't mean that he doesn't provide examples, although there are times when he doesn't, but that he lacks consistency and frequency in citing sources to support his conclusions and claims. So, Choquette's work in this book is built upon an assumption that human morality and goodness advances as time progresses. One example of this is found in a discussion in which he argues that the fundamental assumptions of European superiority were only meaningfully challenged in the mid to late 20th century. Another example of this is seen in his assessment of immigration and religion in Canada in the second half of the 20th century. He sees Canadian Christians' acknowledgement of the legitimacy of other religions, as well as religious pluralism, as a positive change for Canada. Furthermore, he sees new immigrants' primary contribution to Canadian society as being them as a catalyst to the development of a Canadian society that is more open to change and differences than the Canada of the past. Choquette provides an introductory discussion of the secularization thesis by discussing two common theories of secularization. However, it remains unclear where he stands on the subject. He does state that secularization was a reflection of the social and ideological developments of the turbulent decades following World War II. He sees perceptions of secularization in a positive light because it prompted responses such as Vatican II, increased Protestant ecumenism, the development of the ecumenical movement, and greater Christian social engagement. However, he does fail to critically engage with the secularization thesis or state where he stands on the matter. Choquette is unique in his use of evangelicalism as a term to label respective movements in Protestantism and Catholicism. Evangelicalism has, for a very long time, referred to a movement within Protestantism. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. But Choquette is actually referring to Protestant evangelicalism and Catholic ultramontanism, respectively, seeing them as being rooted in the same fundamental religious outlook. In fact, Choquette seems to put a lot of effort into trying to show how broad the similarities are between Protestant and Catholic, while also demonstrating their differences and not shying away from their deeply rooted mistrust of each other that has unfortunately resulted in excesses at times. In conclusion, though this is a long book that is best used for an undergraduate course in the history of religion in Canada, Choquette is definitely onto something with the central theme of the unique relationship between religion and society. So I just want to let you guys know that I really appreciate you watching these videos, and I'm open to your feedback. While content is more important to me than flashy production for these videos, I don't want them to be boring. I also don't want them to be unclear or confusing. So please leave me any feedback or questions that you might have, and I'll be happy to address those. That concludes this video, but I want to thank you for watching, and if this is a subject that draws your interest, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for the next video.